Ramesh, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone, and attendees today at ADB's SEADS 2020. Your Excellency, Minister Sri Mulyani, and President Masa Asakawa as well. And thanks so much, Cherie, as well, for what you shared earlier. I'll think a little bit about that zero trust policy tonight, and see what that means. But so I'm going to jump right into it. There's one thing that is completely beautiful about having a virtual symposium, because on a call like this, we have intimacy as though we just dialed in on a one-on-one Zoom call. So if this is okay with you, I'll speak just like it's just you and me, okay? Just you and me, we can lean in and let's have a real talk. Now, why is this really important? It's because we know we face the gravity of what's happening here today, but we all want to know what we can do. What is it we can do today? Now, with that, I have 3 simple messages that can guide each of the audiences to translate what our speakers before us can take, right, for them to actually do something together. Now, the first message is a simple one. The challenges ahead are far too great for the public sector or the private sector alone to handle. Contemplating this simple sentence for a second, we realize that the world as interconnected as this is causing each of us to suffer or feel like we're lacking in something because our neighbors, our customers, our investors, everyone is suffering together. If you remember maybe some point in your career, where in a company you have a team building exercise and the facilitator had to make up some fake challenge that you had to go through together. And then all we have to find ways to work together, bust across the silos. This is right. Humanity is in a giant team building exercise with a real challenge. So with that in mind, I find the role of venture capital as a fellow financier, just like the ADB, sandwiched in the middle. Like for myself, as 500 startups, like my firm, we are not only representing a very large group of the private sector. We've invested in 2,400 companies in 76 countries. That means there are 5,000 entrepreneurs who are part of this. But at the same time, the money we manage, they're from sovereign wealth funds, they're from pensions, they represent insurance. So we need both sides to win. So for all the venture capital and startup folks tuning into this conference, we have a job to do as well. And I want to show you the kind of things that we can actually do to help. Now, with knowing the importance of this and the fact that we have to work together, the second message I have is about how I've observed 5 engines of existing public-private collaboration. And while this term, PPPs or public-private partnerships, may be familiar to governments, for all the private sector folks on the call, let's just observe what we were doing before COVID. The public sector has a lot of services they provide to serve people, and so does private sector and companies as well. That's engine number 1. What I observe as engine number 2 is what I think Ibu Sri Mulyani mentioned earlier, where the public sector is understanding what kind of policies will serve the private sector or incentivize the private sector to serve people in a more meaningful and impactful way. Now, engine number 3 is something that is very new, especially in the world of tech startups, where some companies like Palantir or others have been proactive about going to governments and say, hey, dear government, here are things I can do to help you operationalize and digitize so you can serve the people more efficiently. So this is engine number 3. But let's tune in to something more exciting than this, which is engine number 4, where public sector and private sector come together and invent a new way to serve people. And I like to call upon an example from Indonesia. A portfolio company we have called eFishery. They have IoT for fish farmers. The Indonesian government had reached out to them and say, hey, let's create 20 smart fish villages together. Let's just leapfrog a few of these villages into IR 4.0, like that. And they've started to roll out about 11 of these fish villages, and the fish farmers' income, some of them have actually tripled as a result of this joint initiative. What starts off as just 20 pilot villages can be a model for many other villages across Indonesia. And this comes from a cooperation, a proactive cooperation for both public and private sector to serve people. And there are many examples like this. Now, the 5th engine, which is super interesting, is when you enable people to serve people. Again, more examples from Indonesia. We have companies in our portfolio like iGrow, where people are lending money to farmers to actually farm, to produce a kind of like agricultural products that help with food security, especially in a time like this. And they have already facilitated loans of double-digit millions US dollars in just the past 2 years. There are also other examples from Indonesia, like Kita Bisa, where during the height of COVID, on a daily basis, peer-to-peer crowdfunding of social support, we're doing an average of 500,000 US dollars a day of people helping people. This engine number 5, decentralization and peer-to-peer, can be a huge force for nation building. Now, if we look at this visual of all the engines combined and how a country is functioning now, digitization is enabling or supercharging the way all these 5 engines work together. And I really just wanted to show this visual for various folks in private sector or public sector to see that, hey, there's so many things we can do together. And again, to give just a few more examples that across not just Indonesia, of course, but other countries in Southeast Asia, Bukalapak, an Indonesian company and a unicorn, has 5.5 million offline agents taking digitization services, working hand in hand with the government to roll them out all the way to the edges of Indonesia. But also from Singapore, we have like ventures actually created from the Port Authority of Singapore. There's a company called Holio in our portfolio. They were incubated by the government and spun out or developed or ushered out into the world, where we also invested into digitized ports. So you can have the one belt, one road on a digital platform. And in Malaysia, we've got government-linked corporations like Petronas, working hand in hand with venture capital firms like 500 to invest and co-invest in solar, co-investing in agri-tech companies. Today, as I speak before you, these engines of collaboration are at unprecedented levels. Each one of us on this call can do something. And this brings me to the last point I have today, which is, with these engines in mind of public-private collaboration, how do we accelerate them? I'd like to offer a focal point. There are many things we can do, but let's focus on one thing. And it's so relevant to ADB and also for firms like us as well. It's about financing. The key to unlock a lot of the innovators is to provide financing for the innovators. Now, why do I pinpoint financing as a focal point? You can just look all over LinkedIn. You browse around, the profiles there, hashtag ready to work. So many professionals are ready to work. We have entrepreneurs, really active government officials. I have friends in various governments. They are working even harder than the entrepreneurs, like into the night, trying to super busy, trying to work. And we, at the same time, we've got printed money for hands out, bailouts, but we don't want to have change makers also be left out. We want the change makers, the innovators, and these handful of efforts which have 80-20 outside returns to be adequately resourced. And this focal point I have, and it's a very quick story, okay? Some people say, oh, we need more budgets, we need more money. I actually disagree. This snapshot I have here in this photo is from 2018 New York General Assembly. I was in a very similar panel with different finance ministers and also investment banks who had a lot of money dedicated for impact investing. So we asked, I asked, hey, do you think this is a funding issue? Why everyone feels like there's a funding gap? They call it a funding gap, but it's not. The funders were there and say, hey, we have the money, but where are the companies? The social enterprises, too small, not scalable enough. All these unicorns, all profit seeking, they're not mindful of the impact they can make. So they claim it's a pipeline issue. And just like the examples I shared from Indonesia today, Bukalapak, iGrow, Kita Bisa, and so much more, I told them these real examples. Their eyes were wide open. They're like, wow, can you introduce them to me, please? So with that in mind, I think that unlocking financing is not a question of more budgets. The question is of discovering each other. And for impact investing as a theme, that project is underway. But I think we're leaping a little bit too fast. And this is a challenge I throw down to myself as well as a leader in venture capital. I believe that ESG is a very easy starting point for all of us to get involved. Why? It is an established framework that multiple trillions of asset allocators in the world understand. It is a framework that fund managers across the world understand. Yet, the tech startup industry, for all of its speed, is the slowest to adopt ESG. In fact, I would dare say they have largely ignored ESG on the path of seeking the next round of financing. And to me, this is a very big problem. Why? Because they are the innovators. They need to provide metrics to actually help the asset allocators see the impact that's actually being created. And for us at 500, we lead by example. The first thing we did, we said, hey, let's get our head of global investor relations and our director of all communications and marketing, as well as our ESG person, to be the same person. We hunted around the world and we got that person a year ago, and it has really shaped wonders for our leadership within our firm. They have to be the same person. Next thing we did, we reached out to LPs. We didn't wait for them to formulate their ESG policies and then come to the fund managers. We reached out to all of them and said, hey, look, if you are like speaking about ESG with stakeholders, what's your journey like? Let's collaborate closely with how you want to map things so we can make it practical. Third thing we did, the startups. We have a platform here on 500.co/ESG. We created frameworks for ESG for even idea stage startups. And the startups were shocked. They're like, hey, isn't ESG for like really big companies? Like, I'm just a small little company. ESG is not for me. We're like, no, this is the best time. You're at your seed stage of formulating your future. Install the intention. We've got these easy policies and documents, get it started. And I'm proud to say that we've even integrated this in our latest set of funds to be a criteria in our investment decision-making about their ESG policies. I'm so proud. In just past 6 or 7 months, we had 75 startups say, yes, I'm gonna do this. And they have installed ESG policies as part of investment criteria. And this might seem like, like a small example, but this is like something that historically has not been very prevalent in the tech startup industry. So I'm very, very proud of that. Now, with that in mind, like the experiments is not mine and ours alone as a venture capital industry. It's up to us to also reach out beyond people we don't normally work with. Here's an example from the United Nations Development Program. And pardon the rest of the countries, there's so many Indonesian examples. It's just that my wife and I live in Indonesia for 4 years, so I have to have a lot of examples here. So over here we have a collaboration with UNDP Indonesia, where we took 9 Indonesian startups who are making collectively $30 million of revenue. And we said, look, let's install some impact metrics. Let's put ESG installation in, and let's bring you to Singapore to talk to the money people. We took them there, 100 money asset allocators from family office, impact funds, all the way to commercial funds, got to see these 9 Indonesian startups, not just from a money standpoint, but impact standpoint. And I'm so happy that between each of these 9 Indonesian startups, they secured 15 to 20 meetings on that day alone. And some of them have resulted with real financing deals. And these are the last 1 or 2 examples, and I'm gonna kind of close up on the points here, is that we're an experiment that's happening live now of the World Economic Forum. 500 startups, World Health Organization, and World Economic Forum, we banded together to say, look, let's get more innovators involved with the COVID-19 challenges. We used a platform called Uplink, right, to source a lot of these challenges from around the world and make sure that they are discovered by asset allocators and leaders of the world. And so this process is still ongoing, and it's yielding a lot of great results. Now, the last experiment is in motion as well, is that the traditional fund strategies that asset allocators and fund managers like ourselves have done was based on the old world and the old economy of predictable, expected good times. That's changed. We're gonna need new strategies. We're gonna need very focused strategies. And I really wanna applaud the Asian Development Bank's ADB Ventures, because they have a lot of very specific, purpose-driven strategies on how to allocate capital, from everything from future food, very thematic ways of approaching it. And for us, I think that is the way to go. These experiments that we do with asset allocators require new strategies to finance the innovators to do the things that are required right now. In summary, point number 1 was the challenges ahead are too great for the public sector or the private sector alone to handle. Point number 2, there are 5 engines of public-private collaboration. Let's accelerate them. Point number 3 is that the key to unlocking this is to finance the innovators. Impact is a journey. ESG is a good starting point. And there's so much more for us to do. Thank you so much, each of you, for dialing in on this call today, in this symposium, especially for your audience, Your Excellency Sri Mulyani, as well as President Masa, Shari, and Ramesh. Let us finance the next generation of innovators together. Thank you.